So in this video, we're going to look at the integumentary system and kind of give a general overview um, to set the groundwork for the next several videos for this chapter. Excuse me. So there's a lot of times this system will be called the skin, and that is not scientifically correct, but the skin is the majority of it. The skin we're going to see is a specific thing called the cutaneous membrane. But the integumentary system is more than just the cutaneous membrane, although it is the majority of it again. So anyway, it is the largest organ by weight in the body. It's going to have several types of tissues that are in it. And the cutaneous membrane itself has two layers. It has two layers. It has an epidermis and a dermis, and we'll look at both of these a lot more as we go through. This prefix epi means above, and so simply this is saying we've got the dermis and then a layer that is above the dermis, and that's it. So remember, the term epi is good to kind of know to kind of help you understand. In general, if you see epi something, it is going to tell you it is above whatever that something is. So for instance, again, like the epidermis is above the dermis, but most students have heard of the epiglottis, which is the little elastic cartilage that closes over the trachea so you don't quote unquote swallow down the wrong pipe. But if I tell you, if you know that there's a structure called the epiglottis, and I ask you, what do you think it covers? You could make an educated guess that the epiglottis is above an opening called the glottis, and you'd be right. So again, just try to throw those things out so you can kind of remember that. So these are the actual three layers, and again, I don't like this. I don't know why it says this. The three layers of the epiderm, or the three layers of the integumentary system, are the epidermis and the dermis, which together those two constitute the cutaneous membrane. And then this layer that can be called one of two names. It can be called the hypodermis, which simply means below the dermis, or it can be called the subcutaneous, which is telling you that it is below the cutaneous membrane, which again, the cutaneous membrane is the dermis and the epidermis. And again, for future reference, when you get into the nervous system, you'll be looking at sensations that are coming into the central nervous system, and one of the large sensations that's coming in is called cutaneal sensation, or the cutaneous sensation, and you should be able to tell that that means it's senses that are coming from the skin, from that cutaneous membrane. So anyway, the subcutaneous layer, the hypodermis layer, is not going to be something we're going to talk a lot about. It doesn't get studied a lot in here, and really in the most part, because the epidermis and the dermis, the cutaneous membrane, is what gets kind of the star of the show. But the subcutaneous layer is basically an insulating layer, as it says here. It is mainly adipose tissue, and it does have some of that areolar tissue. And remember, areolar tissue, when we saw the tissue slides, was that tissue that had those strands all around it. And those were mainly collagen and elastin fibers, which are helping give strength and the ability to stretch and come back. And you can kind of see that as far as your skin goes. It's got the ability to stretch and come back. Again, as it says here, it's not considered part of the skin because that's the very reason, since the skin is the cutaneous membrane, and this is called the subcutaneous layer. It's saying it's below it. And besides areolar and adipose tissue, it's going to contain a lot of the blood vessels that are going to be going up into the dermis and the epidermis. Well, it looks like a lot of chicken scratch on there. So this is a picture of a tissue slide of the integumentary system. So we have this, which is the epidermis, and again, we looked at this when we were looking at tissues, and we said that it is stratified squamous epithelium. We're going to see that there's some other pretty interesting things in there. This stratified squamous epithelium has a wavy basement membrane. That was part of the things we talked about when we looked at the tissues, that was one of the defining features of the stratified squamous. The largest area here, this little second layer, this is the dermis. Again, it's the largest layer, and it is going to be where we're going to see a lot of the structures we'll look at. Well, like the hair. The hair is kind of the main one we really concentrate on in parts of it. And then finally, this bottom layer, as it says here, that is mainly adipose tissue, is going to be the hypodermis or the subcutaneous layer. This again is a picture. This is one of the ones we use in lab. It breaks it down where you can see the dermis, epidermis, and the subcutaneous here. I didn't say those in order, sorry. We will study and look at, sweat glands in this chapter, and we're going to look at the hair and all the great structures that are associated with it. We're not going to spend a ton of time on it right now, but just know this is for our lab book, this is the picture in the lab book, and I highly recommend you being able to fill that out. Not only does it help you get practice in spelling things, but there is something that helps you learn in the act of copying from one side to the other. Again, I say this in multiple times during my classes and labs that nobody learns in one simple way. In order to truly learn, you have to engage different parts of your brain. Writing something down takes a different area of your brain to do that than it takes to say something out loud. And that takes a different area of the brain to say something out loud compared to reading it and making a mental image of it. So all of these things are important. So don't try to think that there's just one way to learn. You have to kind of engage all the parts of your brain to really, truly learn the material. So I highly encourage you to take your lab book and just copy these down. And as you're doing it, just try to pay attention to what you're doing and not just letting your brain wander off somewhere else. So anyway, that's the general overview, and we will get into the more specific areas of this as we move along. Take care and have a great day.